Back on the YouTube channel taking your questions. A couple of good ones this week. We had a pile of recent questions come in, similar themes. We're trying to group them together so that we can get to as many as we can, and I try to pick out those that are representative of the larger group. So the first question comes from Hannah in Cape Town, South Africa. Hannah asks, Brian, you've spoken about big global challenges like geopolitics and economics, but what personal experiences shape the way you choose the topics and the guests for your podcasts? It's a good question, Hannah. I don't know that my personal experiences shape the things I'm interested in so much as my curiosity follows threads. And I try to pull at that thread to see what it unravels and what's behind it. And so that might be the personal element. That's what I do in my personal life. When I find something interesting, I just keep pulling at that thread to see what's behind it and what unravels with it. But anytime that I travel, anytime that I meet somebody new with a unique background or unique experiences, or if I'm interacting with people in either a professional setting or a personal setting, or even talking with family, I usually get inspired for ideas by what I hear from those folks, because I can only do so much reading. I can only be interested in so many things. And if you really want to know what's interesting in the world, you have to get a big, diverse range of perspectives and points of view. And it's just hard to do that with the people who are sort of in your life every day. It becomes a bit of an echo chamber. So you have to reach outside of that. So if there's anything from my personal experiences that maybe helps me shape some of those topics, it would be my conversations with folks that I'm meeting, new, just out in the world. And especially when you travel and you're interacting with people that you might only meet once, you might only spend a half hour with them or an hour with them in a particular setting. And something that they say or something about their past inspires me to think and want to learn a little more about that background or that experience. And I would encourage that for anybody out there. If you're curious about the world, there's nothing like meeting new people, putting yourself in new situations, traveling around, striking up conversations. And whether or not that's a person that you ever talk to again, you'll probably learn something, and you'll probably have some piece of curiosity triggered in your mind, and it'll make you want to learn a little bit more. And especially in geopolitics, oftentimes you meet people when you're traveling who are from various parts of the world that maybe you don't think that much about, but it's a big part of their life because it's where they're from, and they'll share some anecdote about their family or something happening, back home. Maybe it's even something benign like the weather. But it'll give you a little window into another area of the world. And if you explore what's going on there, you might find a trend or a topic that's familiar to what's happening close to home. And it gives you a whole new line of items to question. So Hannah, hopefully that's helpful to you in thinking about, how my personal experiences shape my topics, and maybe how yours can shape the things that you're interested in and interested in pursuing. All right. And our last question, our second question for this week, is coming from David, who is in Auckland, New Zealand. Love that we have listeners in New Zealand. Your show focuses, or tends to focus, on long-term trends rather than short-term headlines. Do you ever worry that makes the podcast feel less relevant in the moment? I don't. Thank you for the question, David. And the reason I don't is because the goal of this podcast is really to be a timeless program. Now, realistically, there are topics that we've covered here that might be less salient 20 years from now, or even 10 years from now, or even 2 years from now. I understand that. But we cover big picture trends, and the whole concept of that is that these are trends that are going to take place over a long arc of time, and we're only in a small portion of that. And in some ways, we're talking to our guests, and we're looking into the future, and we're opining on what we think may happen. But we spend a lot of our conversations reflecting on what already is observable around us, and it's likely that those types of trends will still be true months from now, certainly, potentially even years from now. I'm a big believer that people stumble upon podcasts. They stumble upon topics. And some of the best podcasts out there are those that are just as relevant in their conversation because of that timeless quality, if you discovered it 4 years after it published, as it was in the moment. I don't know that the podcast format is all that useful for real time, because do you really have the ability to download a show every single day and follow it every single day? Some people do. Most people don't. Even if you publish weekly and you're talking about the topics of the week, I really think that's a format that's best served by traditional forms of media, whether that's your local radio station, a national radio network, any of the television networks, including those that stream online. But a podcast by its nature is something that you're going to download and you're going to receive episodes of. But it may take you a little while to get to those episodes. And then if you miss one, or you miss a week, or you go on vacation or something, you feel like you've missed out on a lot. You fall out of the rhythm of it, and perhaps you're not able to keep up with it, and you just lose track. But a show like this is one that you can come back to anytime. And that means you can come back to it in years to come. So it is important, I think, to distinguish the program from a lot of what's out there, which is chasing the headlines of the moment. There's plenty of shows that do that. It's a crowded space. We don't need to be one of those. And there's nothing that we really want to add to that conversation in real time. We want to take the amalgamation of all of those topics that might be making short-term headlines, put them in a bigger context that will still be relevant and true months, maybe even years from now. And whenever you land on this show, whatever headlines are happening at that time, you can put them in the context of the topics and trends that we're discussing, whether those are health innovations, whether those geopolitical evolutions, economic evolutions. We talk about topics. We have one coming up on this program on parenting. I mean, that's going to be an eternal topic. And we talked about the trends around religion. We talked about the trends of demographic changes. These are big, arcing topics that will evolve over time, but in so many of our discussions, I do my research. I look back at what was said 20 years ago, and it's still true today. We're just a little further along in the arc of that thinking. So hopefully that answers the question for you, David, and hopefully to everybody who's listening to this, you got a little window and a little insight into how I think about this show and how I put it together. Thank you all for subscribing to this YouTube channel. I'll keep answering your questions here. That seems to be one of the great benefits of using this channel, is to answer user questions in a way that we can't do on the long-form podcasts. But I do hope that you will subscribe and recommend to your friends to subscribe to the main podcast feed, the Brian J Matos Show, where we do interviews with experts on key topics. We're doing fewer of them than we did in our first 2 seasons, only because we got a lot of feedback that they're big, dense, thick topics. They take a little time to digest. So sometimes folks want to re-listen to them. And so when we put too much out at one time, it was hard for people to be able to really absorb those and think about them. So we're doing fewer, but we're doing more in-depth on each of those and giving everybody time to catch up. And if you're new to the podcast, I mean, we have 60 plus episodes out there now, lots of great interviews with lots of great guests. And because they are meant to be long-term trend topics and timeless in nature, you can go back and listen to things we recorded a couple of years ago and hopefully still find a lot of value in it today. And we hope that you do that and share this with your community so that we can grow our community of curious minds. I'll be back again with more answers to your questions soon. And in the meantime, like I said, hopefully you subscribe to this channel. Keep following me. Keep sending in your questions. Info@brianjmatos.com is the best way to do that. And we'll talk to you all again real soon.